So it's kind of a lot of calls me with wonder. Man, we just through the whole.
All right. So first of all, thank you. Had some technical difficulties. We got a big room today. Fortunately, we don't have anybody join us on the computer per se, as far as members that are participating that way. So thank you all for making the trip here to Goshen. This makes it a lot better meeting. I am, for those of you who don't know, we do have some new members here today. My name is Matt Gearsman. Technically, I'm an employee of the Michigan Area Council of Governments. Michigan Area Council of Governments sort of provides the staffing for the River Basin Commission. And I've got a couple folks here with me that I want to introduce. Kate Barrett is here. Kate works with me. She's program coordinator, aquatic ecologist, really smart gal. And then back there in the crowd is Ashley Matthews, who helps with administrative stuff, minutes and invoicing and some different things. So we've got a team at Baycog. I get a lot of support there, and so I want to thank them for that. I guess before I do the roll call, in addition to introducing myself and my coworkers, I think it's important, especially with the new members, to do a little basic overview. I mean, just super quick. I do this just about every meeting. The St. Joe River Basin Commission, what it is, what we're all about. Sorry, I'm going to show a map. There it is. It's an area of land, okay? So when we talk about the St. Joe River Basin, we're talking about all the land that drains to the St. Joe River of Lake Michigan. We do have another St. Joe over in Steuben County, but we call that the bad St. Joe, so we're not concerned with that. We've got 6 counties here in Indiana that flow to the St. Joe. And some of them, like LaGrange, the whole darn county is in, but the St. Joe River itself doesn't touch LaGrange County. So you might think, well, what the heck are we doing up there? Why is that an important thing? Well, it turns out what happens on the land is what impacts the water. So if you're concerned about water quantity or quality, you got to look at where the water's coming from. There, and in our statute, it talks about working with the state of Michigan. We were created by the state of Indiana in state statute, and so our governance and our funding is exclusively on the Indiana side. So you all represent those Indiana communities, but we do look to Michigan and hope to get more and more involvement and do projects up there as well. So what we were created to do, address quality issues initially, but also quantity and flood mitigation. We've got all kinds of stuff in the statute in the way of how we might go about that, but the basic thing is we're supposed to provide a forum for discussion, study, evaluation of water issues. And so we might be talking flooding, drainage issues, we might be talking water quality, wastewater and coli, even groundwater contamination, all kinds of stuff. It's a huge area of resources. Because of that, there's a lot of different elements of local government that touch that. Health department touches it, all these kind of things. And yeah, obviously, I don't expect to read this and put it up there as kind of a review. We can always go back to it as what we need. But this gets to who we are. Who makes up the commission? From each of these 6 counties in Indiana, there's several pieces that have an impact on one. First, we got the executive. So we got a county commissioner from each county, as well as the mayor or the council president of the largest towns in each of the counties. In addition to that, we got the county surveyor, managing all regulated drains, rural drainage. We have the health officer. Health department, septic permits, all kinds of different public health issues around water quality. And then last but certainly not least, we have a representative from each soil and water conservation district in the basin. For those of you who are not familiar with them, these are the local arm of government that works with landowners to reduce runoff, prevent soil erosion, water conservation, all kinds of good stuff. A lot of interaction with farmers in particular, but it depends on which county you're on. So that's who the commission is. I'm going to go through a roll call and kind of call on each one of you. I guess, again, we don't have anybody attending virtually today, but we do have an electronic participation option that can make these things kind of cumbersome. The important thing that why I left this slide in is when we do take action on things today, if you could state your name and what county you're from when you make a motion or you second a motion, that would be really helpful. For one, when Ashley does the minutes, it helps us make sure we get it right. And the other thing is, we've got a sort of a, I don't know what you call it, a tradition or just a convention that we've been doing for a little while now, where we try to have a different county second the motion than who makes the motion, just to make sure that it's not one county driving things. If it ever did come to that, we can talk about it. It's certainly not in our bylaws or statute or anything, but it's just a convention we've been doing, and I don't think it's a bad idea. So if you can state your name in the county, that kind of helps with that. Okay, with that, rather than a formal roll call, I mean, although we've got so many members here today, there wouldn't be that many blank spaces. I just want you, I want to go down, first of all, I want to make sure we don't have any members hiding out there in the audience still. You know, sometimes they try that. I like to have you all here. On the table. It looks like you are. I'm going to start over here with Phil. If you could, your name, your title, and if you are, which we're not, proxy representative. If you serve on behalf of someone else, let us know who that is. So go ahead and get started, Phil.
Bill Parker, Elkhart County Surveyor.
Proxy for the health officer, Dr. Remington.
Jim Moyer, proxy for Michael Kistner, Costa County Surveyor.
Jewel Wise, Hassia County Soil and Water District.
John Roberts, I'm proxy for the Costa County Commission, Gary Croner. Martin Franke, representing the LaGrange County Soil and Water Conservation District.
Lenny Lippy, Steuben County Commissioner.
Jim Slaybaugh, Steuben County Surveyor.
Sue McGee, Housing Coordinator, listening and all proxies with there.
I'm President.
Chris Thomas, and as board coordinator for the city of Nicola, representing the county. Janelle Hack, representing Soil and Water, Steuben County.
Dan Lynch, I'm the proxy for Noel County Commissioner at S.
The Hardison.
John, proxy for John McNamara, Circuit County Surveyor. Adam Bowden, Assistant Director of Engineering for the City of Mishawaka, proxy for Mayor David Gould.
Steve Vaughn, proxy for Zach Bolsinger, LaGrange County Surveyor's Office.
Oh, that's it. All right. Well, we definitely have a quorum today, Chris. So feel free to conduct business here.
So Matt will lead us through the consent agenda. Just as a reminder, the consent agenda routine procedural items together, just keep the meeting moving. And anybody can make a request to have an item removed if they would like discussion on it. So go ahead and
Okay. Thanks, Chris. Yeah, we started doing it this way when we had to do a roll call vote on every single vote. It just lumps our routine items together, and you know, we can discuss them even with it in here. But if you do feel like I don't want to put on the minutes with the approval of claims at the same time, we can pull something out. So assuming we're good to go, I'm going to start by minutes, which Ashley did. Sent around to you all last week.
So,
Please.
yeah. We have any additions or corrections to the minutes? If not, move on to the financial reports.
All right, so I sent this around as well. There are three sort of statements that we're going to go through here in the financial report. The first one is our activities. This is like our profit and loss statement. Everybody can have some extra copy. Did everybody get materials? Needs them? I've got some up here. Don't be shy. I got it. Don't go to waste. So anyway, on the financials, you know, this is, first of all, our fiscal year started July 1, and this covers everything up to December 31st of 21. We're always one quarter in the rear on this reporting. In the financial statement, just a couple things to bring your attention to. The first item is up there at the top under income. You might notice that our local government income is way down. That's because invoices for this year did not go out until last month. So we're just now starting to get some money in. So we should see a little bit of that in the next quarter. And then we really get our biggest chunk in the last quarter. We have received some funds from a couple of communities who are real quick on this. The other thing, down in the special projects, just to know what some of these expenses were for under our water monitoring, we've got materials for the biological monitoring that is taking place this summer, as well as the Waldron Lake USGS sponsor in Noble County. So those are the two main expenses under water monitoring. Under planning and resource development, we're looking at stuff from the Noble County Flood Resilience Planning Project, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the meeting. And then last but not least, under education and outreach, we had some website related cross-domain renewal, as well as the big one there is the Indiana Watershed Leadership Academy. We sent a few folks to that this year, so they're going through that right now. But those are the only things I had notes on in the way of the activity statement. Did anybody have any questions about that part of the report? Okay. So the next one is like our balance sheet. Basically showing the liabilities that we've got. Right now we've got accounts payable. This is pretty common. Every quarter we've got what we owe MACOG from the previous quarter. So the 22,000 on there is what we owe MACOG. We'll be approving at this meeting. Or actually, it's what we would have already approved at the, no, sorry, it's this week. Sorry. The one thing to note on here is we did have an outstanding check when this report was made. So if you did want to check our total cash versus what you see on our bank statement is going to show a little high because that check hasn't cleared, but I show it on here. It's in our bank reconciliation, which I also included in your packet. And I guess the most important number on here I always want to bring people's attention to is total fund balance, about $300,000 right now. That's what we've got in the bank to work with. So that's our savings account essentially. Any questions about the balance sheet? Okay. The last piece is our cash flow statement. So this one sometimes will be a little different than the others because it's on a cash basis. For example, the state of Indiana, this is going to be the same. You're going to hear this for the next couple of meetings. We get a quarterly appropriation from the state. We have to invoice them. I invoiced them last fiscal year, so let's say May or something like that. I didn't get that payment, so we booked it last fiscal year. We didn't actually get that hit our account until August. So we're $22,000 roughly high on state income for our cash flow this year. And that's going to carry through until the end of the fiscal year, unless they don't get us our payment in time at the last month. And as well as some expenses that have come in since then. Total of $35,790 in claims. Does anybody have any questions on any of the claims? I think that's all I've got for each of the items, but yeah.
The items on the consent agenda.
Ready for motion to approve.
Second, I don't know.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion doesn't carry. So amendment to the business.
Yeah. So the first item we've got under old business is just a couple of existing project updates. Down under our special projects, we do all kinds of things thanks to the funding we get from the state, and really it's due to the support we have from local governments that covers our basic operating expenses allow us to do some projects. So, the one that I'm going to start with is our Noble County Flood Resilience Planning Project. For those of you who've been around for a while, we started a study a couple years ago. We got a grant to help support that. North branch of the Elkhart River drains a good chunk of LaGrange County as well as a big part of Noble County. We're talking Sylvan Lake, Indian Lakes in LaGrange County, West Lakes in Noble County, and there has historically been a lot of flooding issues there. One of the things we looked at in the study was whether or not creating some detention upstream, some big reservoirs or basins basically, would help attenuate some of the flood flows. The results of that study found that they wouldn't make much of a difference, and they'd have to be huge and cost millions of dollars. But there were some next step recommendations to improve resiliency. And one of them was to work with each of the communities that drains through the North Branch on their planning and zoning. So their flood ordinances or their stormwater ordinance, that kind of thing. We decided to start as a pilot by working with Noble County. And so over the last 6 months or so, we've held a series of meetings with Noble County officials. We had county surveyor, county commissioner, the emergency manager, notably the floodplain administrator was at all of our meetings. I got to meet Norm, get to know him a little bit. They were good meetings. We learned a lot. I just went and gave a presentation to the county commissioners on Monday, and we talked at this last meeting about some of the issues with the enforcement of the existing ordinance. So it comes out of the meeting, we've got, need to enforce the ordinance, compensatory storage is a jargony kind of term, but it's basically making sure we can't fill the floodplain without creating space somewhere else. They've got their floodplain ordinance in Noble County is good. It goes above and beyond the state minimums by including this kind of thing. And there is maybe some small changes that are recommended in the latest guidance from the DNR. But honestly, their current ordinance is really good, but there's issues with the enforcement of it. And so what I talked to the Noble County commissioners about on Monday was sort of some of the things I'm hearing from landowners out there about how the enforcement, the lack of enforcement rather, is threatening the people who've already invested in there. Basically, by allowing a bunch of fill to be brought into the floodplain, the folks who have already built there are at more risk because that fill is displacing some flood water. So flood levels are going higher for every bit we add to it. And they've got an ordinance that's supposed to prevent that, but they haven't been enforcing it. And so, we talked about possibly moving that part of the ordinance into their stormwater ordinance, which is enforced by the surveyor who believes in compensatory storage and would be more likely to enforce it. And so there's some talk about that. But, I don't know. I guess the final report is going to be delivered by her. That final report is basically a flow chart of some kinds of things that we would do, who would beat it, what the timeline is. There's a lot of good stuff in there. I think the real value of the effort that we did, though, wasn't around, what kind of new things we might propose in the county, but rather getting a better understanding of just why things are the way they are now. And I'm hoping to be able to work with the commissioners, and whether it's the current floodplain administrator that obviously has some issues. I got to know Norm, I can respect Norm, but he's not doing his job right now. It's not, and I'm willing to say that right here, Norm, if you're listening. It's not. You don't have the option of not enforcing the ordinance. He thinks he's doing the commissioners a favor, and it's a tough situation. So, does anybody have any questions about this? Have I lost folks? We've been down the week. We've talked about this stuff a lot at our meetings, so I kind of assume folks know what I'm talking about. But some of you have might. Dan, I was there on Monday. Dan represents Commissioner Hess in Noble County. I don't know. I think they get it, but they're just frustrated with how they feel that this is going to cost them more money. And who's Norm again? Norm is the floodplain administrator in Noble County. He's the building inspector. He's always been the building inspector. When the last floodplain administrator quit, he got that shoveled into his lap. So he never wanted it in the first place, and it's just hard. You don't want to tell people, no, they can't, build up their driveway or whatever it is. Basically, Norm feels if he were to strictly, I think we talked about this the last week, if he were to strictly enforce this ordinance, it would prevent all new development in the floodplain.
Well, it should be developing.
And that's what the consultants say. They're like, yeah, that's why I put that in there.
I understand the ordinance is enforced by, what sort of, I know you have DNR up there, but like IDA and Army Corps, I mean, don't they have some sort of enforcement on that?
Well, they do, so here's how it goes. The local government enforces it on behalf of the DNR. And the DNR is enforcing it on behalf of me. So in the sense, a community, in order to be eligible for the National Flood Insurance Program, they have to stay in good standing with the DNR. Noble County is not in good standing with the DNR, but they haven't pulled their status yet. It's kind of like, just keep sending them naughty letters, and so far, nothing's happened yet. And from what I understand, the history in Indiana is communities have been able to keep being naughty for a long time, and no one's ever really gotten revoked. But the DNR will eventually, that's the recourse. So that hasn't happened, Adam. So the DNRs, they're getting calls all the time that they're not enforcing their ordinance, and they're writing them up. But it turns out, actually, I just found out that a lot of the violations actually aren't about compensatory storage. We're always talking about compensatory storage, and that is what you see, these truckloads of fill being brought in, people get all upset. But actually, there's more just administrative issues around not filing certain papers, not measuring the new homes that are built to ensure that they're, it sounds like it was some administrative issues too. But I think this is something as a result of the resources to hire a dedicated floodplain administrator. Norm's the building inspector. He already had a plate full of stuff to do. This got thrown on. I'm sure it's kind of like low priority, and I don't know. But yeah, eventually DNR would have to revoke their right to, and then that puts a lot of land. Anybody who's got a mortgage in the special flood hazard area, they're all of a sudden not going to be able to get insurance, and they're going to, that's an issue with their mortgages. So they know, the commissioners know it's a problem. But they're wondering, like, this is what we're afraid of. They're wondering, well, can we just solve our problem by stripping our ordinance down to the bare bones? And it's like, well, you may address your compensatory storage issues, but there's a whole bunch of other administrative issues that won't fix. And what does that say to the people who've already invested in that area when you remove that compensatory storage? Yeah. Anybody else have any questions or comments on this one? All right. I'm gonna move on. This one is much shorter. I don't mean to say sweeter, but it's not exactly sweet from my perspective. So last year there was some legislation that went through Senate Bill 389. The idea with it in the beginning was to completely remove our state wetland regulations. And that is a concern for both water quality and flood mitigation. And so we got involved in this, went down to Indianapolis and lots of work. We had some great local legislators that helped with some of this. And in the end, the bill did not remove all of the regs, but it did deregulate from a state standpoint. It deregulated maybe like 70%, 75% of the wetlands that had state protection before that was removed. And one of the things that they kind of threw in the bill, I think, as like a, oh, here, there's one good part to it. We're going to do this stuff that's going to be hard to swallow, but here's a little sugar with your medicine. And that was, we're going to create the Wetlands Task Force to sort of look at our state wetland regulations and see what can we do to make them better. Because there was no question there was some issues with the state wetland, just confusing. We got state level, we got feds, they don't even use the same class system. If I was someone who needed them, I'm a surveyor or something, and surveyors have a different kind of exception, but if I'm a developer who wants to build a driveway through a wetland, it is a very complicated process, and there could have been some improvements made, but I think rather than making improvements, it was like, well, let's just get rid of it, and it won't be a problem anyway. So we had our first meeting of the Wetlands Task Force, and the idea is that at the end of this thing, which will be in October, this task force that the governor appointed is supposed to deliver to the legislature, recommendations about how we should handle our state wetland laws, even though they already changed it. So then they would have the opportunity to potentially change it again. So the first meeting that we had, which was back in February, just after Valentine's Day, we focused on, first we introduced I think it's like 15 members. We got somebody from the Developers Association, we got Farm Bureau there, we had some academia, the agencies, DNR, IDEM. I was there, kind of river basin commissions, we got a few of them in the state. And we had some permitting folks who are consultants who do permitting work, the kind of the ones that have to deal with all the complications and stuff. So we had a good mix of people, kind of got to know where each person was coming from, and then we dove into what the regs are. Where is it confusing? What's the feds say, and all kind of thing. And that's an important thing. I think we touched on this at the last meeting, but just shortly after, literally like a month or less, maybe two, I don't know, after this law was passed, which deregulated a bunch of wetlands from the state level, the federal law changed, and the Army Corps picked up the regulation of a bunch of wetlands. So the net loss of regulated wetlands ended up being fairly minimal, but it's just that federal pendulum has been swinging for 40 years now. And we wanted the state law, when it was originally passed in the 2000s, early 2000s, was to try and say, even when it swings, our wetlands are protected. So the state is constantly kind of protecting a different amount of wetlands, but it's been a mess. Anyway, we got a briefing on all that stuff, and looks like at the next meeting coming up, so in a couple weeks, we'll be focusing on some of the, flood reduction benefits of wetlands. We'll be talking about carbon sequestration, kind of how are these things important for the economy of the state, and how do we handle that? So whether there's even a role with carbon markets and stuff like that. So anyway, I've been participating on behalf of the River Basin Commission. I bring this to you, I guess, one thing just to keep you sort of updated, but also if you know of someone that's like an expert on this kind of topic, the chairman is asking for recommendations of people to speak to. It's when we go down there, it's an all-day thing. We have different presentations, different presenters, and if you knew someone that was really, well-versed in, flood reduction, mitigation, benefits of wetlands, or the carbon issue, or what's to come in May, which is sort of voluntary protection of wetlands. So I think of land trusts, land services, that kind of thing. Anyway, if you know someone, let me know. We'll pass that on to the chair. A lot of words. Does anybody have any questions about Wetlands Task Force or comments on that?
Unrelated, man. And I don't know directly that is related, but it's of concern. The Senate Bill 389 seemed to, tear down some of the infrastructure that was built up for the protection of wetlands in the state of Indiana. I recognize there were problems with the perfect system. It certainly needed improved and streamlined. Just recently, at the end of 2021, there was another change made at the state level, which sort of heads the same direction as far as I'm concerned, and that was the actual repeal of IEC 327 IEC 15-5. That's been a law on the books in Indiana since 2003, commonly known as Rule 5, and it sets up guidelines for erosion, sediment, and stormwater runoff quality control on construction projects in Indiana that disturb an acre or more. Again, not a perfect system. It's been whittled away at. Used to have a 28-day window. Districts are involved in to the extent that we had a 28-day window to perform a plan review. That was necked down to 10 days a couple of years ago. And as I was engaging in a plan review, suddenly at the end of December, I was informed, oh, by the way, the entire legislative vehicle has been repealed as of December 18th, 2021. Well, what replaced it? Well, we took a 12-page document that was in the old book and we replaced it with a 61-page document, which is current, I guess. So where's my guidance? Do I still perform reviews? Yeah. How do I perform a review? Where's my guidance document? Where are my new forms? What criteria do I use to evaluate construction project, that kind of thing? We haven't worked those things out yet. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't know if I guess IDEM doesn't have a direct representative on this board, but IDEM has really seriously dropped the ball on this whole issue. The entire program is a shambles, and apparently people that are interested in developing lands that don't want to mess with erosion control are probably happy with it, but nobody else is. I'm currently using the old paperwork for reviewing plans according to a rule that has been repeated, and which seems a little bit pointless. I don't think that it really can be, the issue can be pushed too far. If somebody really doesn't want to do it, they don't have to do it. I don't know if IDEM is just interested in their about filing fee per plan. I really feel lost in this whole thing. And I think it represents the height of your responsibility. As I understand it, Indiana would stand in some danger of losing substantial funds because we don't have language on the books that keeps us getting our money, from federal agencies like the EPA. Something needs to be straightened out. It needs to be straightened out fast. And I'm not pushing one side or the other. I'm not an advocate for heavy, big government overbearing, a lot of regulation, that kind of thing. I'm more of an advocate for small government. But at the same time, if this is a program worth having, let's have a program. If it's not, let's check the whole thing, but then I guess admit that we're not going to get our federal money. Are you familiar with the circumstances or?
A little bit.
They did the same thing to Rule 13.
Same thing.
I was just kind of looking at it. Yeah.
Four counties, so I'm not familiar with that, but.
It's been a long-standing process that they've talked about for probably 5 years. And then just all of a sudden, here it is.
Yeah.
Public comment period.
I've honestly always felt a little lost in MS4 regs. Like it's somewhat new to me. It's not as new as floodplain administration, but it's still relatively new. I always use help on that. So I was gonna say, I look at Chris and Adam and some of the people that do enforce it, and it's like, I don't know. I don't know how you do it.
Well, so I don't know how much I can clear up, but obviously it's been talks that the able to going to be repealed because they do not want Rule 5 and Rule 13 in Indiana administrative code. It's not typically how it's done. Indiana has not updated their construction stormwater permit for 17 years, so it's been coming. For those projects that were starting in 5, there is a transition, there's continuation coverage that all of those projects need to apply for the general permit. They are still required to follow the requirements of Rule 5 plus a few more that are now in the new construction stormwater general permit. And locally, because we are in transition, our ordinances are now out of date. They reference things that have been repealed, but you still have to go find your local ordinance. And the city of Angola MS4 is working with an engineering consultant to help us get our new MS4 general permit. They have to rewrite all of our ordinances to meet the new requirements of the MS4 general permit, includes construction storm. So there is a transition, and it's not going to be great. I guess my recommendation is that you get on my website type in, transition to construction stormwater general improvement. They have a video of Randy Braun and the department answering questions. It is, solve everything, but it will help people to understand what's going on, how we're kind of in limbo right now. And I don't think other MSPs want to speak up. Again, it's translation, and the farthest time out for us to change our ordinances is 2 years, so it's going to be a process.
A very poorly handled transition. Here,
So, yeah,
I got that. Up to December 18th, there were 5 things by any means. And then I got that message that, well, anything from then to here is now subject to the transition at the point where the people involved will be notified, but no notification has been done yet. So it is just an absolute disorganization.
yeah, I found out in 12 days after the fact that the continuation of coverage in my communities, I didn't even know that. And I contacted them and they said that it was put out through the e-portal that they use for permitting, and any existing Rule 5 projects were notified that they now must apply an administrative thing for the new construction stormwater. But I said I was under the impression that we were going to be notified of that, we were not to come out. Yeah, so.
Oh, not a lot. LaGrange County got approximately 44% for Amish, because, constituency, people live there. Landowners is a much higher percentage of that, yeah. And now we've got a system whereby when they want to apply for an NOI, they have to do it online. They have to stay online.
And now
This provides us unfair.
that's actually an EPA requirement.
Well,
So some of the things that they try to. Well, yeah, some of the things that they try to not put in the permit, EPA said you must put in. So, and that was one of them, because they had those on that. Yeah. So, yes, it's a mess.
Well, in the middle of all of this, the point for Rule 5 and the point for MS4 was to keep soil from eroding, keep sediment from entering waterways, promote water quality, and promote soil health. That's the point of all the legal mumbo jumbo, and it's got lost in the shuffle, and apparently we don't care. I'm sorry, but I'm a little upset about
It
this.
sounds like you care.
I don't care about the legal, but I care that it's old.
I appreciate that. So, if I find anybody at IDEM at the meeting in 2 weeks, I'll make sure to let them know.
Thank you.
All right. So, Wetlands Task Force, we got a few meetings. We're going to be meeting throughout the summer into the fall. We're on when it's in September or June. All right. I think that's all I've got. Oh, no, that's not. But yeah, I'm going to move for a second, or at least shift this little computer over to Kate. Talk so water monitoring programs, the next item.
Just add it over. So, hello everyone. I just have a few updates on our water monitoring program and some other related projects. This is the next view of another NAHOG staff who was in here today, Sophia, who's our community planner, helping me dispatch some samplers on Pigeon Creek, Region 7. So just as for when I do this is recap. I've seen this travel a lot with our new biological sampling sites for our biological monitoring program. We have 12 sites throughout our basin on both Indiana and Michigan sides. And we are, any week now, we should be getting our data back to see what the status of these various sites are in terms of the water quality through the lens of the bugs that live there. But in the meantime, while we're waiting on these data to come through, been kind of working on some other projects to understand trends in water quality and quantity throughout our basin through other projects that have been ongoing. I'll talk a little bit about, we've been working on data analysis for the Greater Elkhart County Stormwater Partnership, understanding what our long-term trends looking like for nitrates, for E. coli, chlorides, et cetera. I also had an opportunity to help with sampling design for Pokagie Band DNR fish tissue contaminant study that's going to be going on in a few weeks on the St. Joe River, as well as been helping out Dara Deegan with their his biological library program in Elkhart, understanding fish communities through that, and we also have a lot of E. coli data on the St. Joe River since the mid-90s. So, which is pretty awesome. And wrap that up with a really nice bow on it by giving a sneak peek to our interactive web map. First off, just a little bit about that stormwater partnership analysis. The Greater Elkhart Stormwater Partnership has this program to understand surface water quality throughout Elkhart County. They monitor on various rotations each year. There's a total of 60 sites that are sampled, but not all those 60 sites every year. But one of the sites kind of shown on this map. Blue shaded region, those are dissolved oxygen levels that are needed to support aquatic growth. So overall, we're doing pretty well in Elkhart County for dissolved oxygen, keeping all those fish and other critters happy.
Before you move on, sorry, I just want to plug Kate here for a second, because we do have some new people. So Kate's a specialist in this aquatic biology, data analysis, and all this kind of stuff. And what's super exciting to me is we've got several of you in the room, this Greater Elkhart County Stormwater Partnership, these Greater Southern Water Health Department, and they've been collecting this data for a long time. And the River Basin Commission, before I came, we collected some water quality in terms of chemistry data. Take it to the lab, run the analysis, here's what it says. And they've got reams of papers that here's all the results. And I don't know, you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like for a long time, other than any one sample, like, oh, the water was good this day, like we knew where it was. It was hard to make sense of lots of data. And so I feel like, and I thought I'd heard from some of you, that one of the cool things is Kate's been able to bring some tools to the table and obviously knowledge to analyze this and look at it in ways that maybe we can pick up some trends and understand the relationship between spatially, where it's at in the watershed, like downstream, upstream, and just in terms of different parameters, flow, all kinds of things. So it's been, I point at you guys kind of, but what's been exciting to me is hearing back from our members that this is really cool. Like, thank you guys for doing this. We haven't had this kind of service, like someone who could look at it, and Dar was our last chair, he's not here today. He's a science guy like Kate, and he's just like, if you have to hire a consultant to do this work, it'd be expensive. So I feel like through Kate, we're able to provide some services to our members that we weren't before. And so it's exciting to me, and that's also a plug for you who do have that kind of situation. I mean, she had a list 2 slides ago. Other partners are coming now. Hey, Pokagie Band, it's like, hey, can you help us with this? Doc is like looking for some extra help. So I think it's great, and I just wanted to plug you on that.
I think this is super important because I see Nancy sitting back there that had worked in that area for 30 years, we have stacks and stacks of pre-written binders of information and material, and Bill can attest to it too from the health department. We knew where the bad spots were, but now it's a matter of taking all that information and data and start to make sense of it, because that would always be the question. The data collected was great, but what would we do with it? And how do we move forward with the information and the data we've got? And this is one of those that I felt over the last 3-4 years, rather than taking more collections, figure out what we've got with the data. It really hasn't changed much, but it gives us an opportunity to look at some of the areas that, hey, we improved this. Okay, what practices from a soil and water standpoint, now I can go back and look and see what changed. Oh, I see, we started our cover crop program in this area, or the practices have changed, or whatever. And what can we use off of those spots to implement others that we have other areas. So, very important. I think this is a great deal.
Thank you.
Appreciate that, and that being said, I think I'm impressed by just the density and frequency of data that's been collected throughout base, especially in Elkhart County, with this particular project, and this has been able to identify not only just trends over time, but we're also looking at relationships among the various water quality variables. And it seems like there's a really strong relationship between total suspended solids and E. coli, and also phosphorus. Those variables seem to be linked, but limited into the degree I can say positive effect. We just know that they seem to track each other in these data set.
And in layman's terms, I think, we correct me if I'm wrong, but like what that would indicate is that the E. coli numbers are related to runoff, not leaching septics. So that would be one where we see it in correlation with the suspended solids. It's just an overland source rather than some draining.
Yeah, and it does seem to be from this data set in particular that under wet conditions, those relationships seem to be amplified, which would make sense, but that would just amplify the runoff situation. So it's been really good learning experience. And I also want to just point out, we're working on the draft report for this partnership members, but then this report will be made available to the public. So hopefully maybe by the next board meeting, we'll let you know where you can find that resource. But all the data, the code used to generate these analyses will be public access domain situation. And then, regarding, kind of related to this, we're really excited about trying to not be okay, let's make sense of certain data sets, what's going on with water quality and quantity, but also making it so it can be maybe, apps are really useful. I feel like they kind of we can all speak the same language when we look at points on a map. So we hired a consultant who's built a prototype. It's actually live. Right now, it's an early version of this web map where we have sites, a limited amount of sites showing up on this just screen grab of our interactive map, where users can go to the site, click on sites, and find out what data are available on that site. And we're still working on kind of figuring out, tinkering with it, see where it kind of breaks. But so far, it's a cool, big, fun way, interactive tool to understand, look at what's going on across different parts of the basin and also over time. You can look at time series data. And so regarding this, I put a little note there just so I really forget to mention this, but it's been really exciting working on the stormwater partnership data. But I'm also interested in finding out what other water monitoring programs and/or data associated with that exist throughout the whole basin. So I'm going to be reaching out to some board members in the next few weeks to not just, what data do you have, but just have a conversation. What do you see as kind of what drove that monitoring program in the beginning, and what are the different issues, just to get a better understanding. Because one thing I've learned throughout this project is there's lots of data out there, but I feel like it's all over the place. And so with this, we kind of want to be a clearinghouse to put all this data in one place for our basin. that's available to everyone who's interested and wants to know, to maybe begin to answer that burning question, how's the water? So working on it.
I want to connect what she's talking about here to something Jim said. And that is, as Kate got into this, we realized, and Kate got in ready to go, I want to monitor Michigan, I'm going to go monitor here, let's take samples, we're going to test nitrate over here, we're going to do this. And when she got into the part, we realized how much data has already been collected and what, does it say anything? And so I think what I see this as like is, before we really get serious about adding new sites, collecting more data, let's first just catalog what's there, not catalog, but bring it into one spot. So one of the huge things she's been doing, this is really cool stuff if you're at all in data at all, but like, if you're lucky, you get it in a spreadsheet, but the columns never match what you got from the other partner. So she's been standardizing all this data that you get, whether it's from Elkhart County Health Department, we've got some from City of South Bend, we've got some other partners now that we've started. We built basically a prototype database. And what she wants to now do is then go out to each of you and say, hey, did the Lakes Council collect some data over the last few years? Can I get those spreadsheets? She's got a program to jam them into that database, and we'll start getting a basin-wide Michigan and Indiana database that's got all of the stuff that's been collected. And then what's kind of cool about this is this actually allows the user, and there'll be some tutorials, but it allows them to do some basically preliminary types of things that she's been doing for Elkhart County. Some of those graphs that she showed, you'll be able to generate those on the fly by picking two sites, picking which variables you're interested in, and hitting run, and it'll produce a little graph. And you can even overlay right now. We're looking at, you can overlay flow data, so you can see how were the nutrients related to the nearest gauge at that time. So anyway, it's got some pretty cool functionality. I'm hoping by the next meeting that way will be worth sharing. The database will never be complete. We'll always be adding to it. But at this point, we just have sort of a test, very small, it's localized to the kind of where Dara does his work, Elkhart does theirs, and then we've got South Bend. It's not even in this one yet, but anyway, hopefully by next time we'll have enough of the bugs worked out where we want to use you guys as guinea pigs and send this thing out. It's like, is this cool at all? Like, can you do anything with this, or what do you think about this? That kind of thing. So it's been pretty. The consultant I'm working with too is really inexpensive for what we're getting out of it. It's been pretty cool. So
Good fun. I think that wraps up.
does anybody have? I got some stuff later, but does anybody have any other questions for Kate? Awesome. Well, thank you, Kate. It's been, I mentioned this at the last meeting, I think, but Kate's been doing way more than just this sciencey stuff too. She's definitely interested in the whole thing and has been a great sounding board for me, whether I'm going out to Indy to talk to legislators or trying to figure out where to install flow monitors, which is what I want to talk about now. So we're not off the water monitoring yet, but this is more my wheelhouse than Kate's. I got some administrative things or action I'm going to ask for from the board. First is related to the bug collection that Kate did last summer. You guys all gave me the authority to enter into an agreement with MBI, the Midwest Biological Institute or something like that, to do this analysis of the bugs. And included in that proposal that they gave us was a cost of about $12,500. You guys approved me to enter into that. They should be delivering the data to us any minute, and then they're probably going to invoice us sometime around April. Our purchasing policy limits my ability to authorize payment at $10,000. So although you guys have authorized me to enter into the agreement, I'd like explicit authority to pay that invoice when it comes in, assuming it does not exceed the $12,500 that it was quoted at, I guess. So I would like to ask you all for.
So moved.
Second.
LaGrange County.
Steuben County.
So that was for Ashley, that was Martin Franke and Lenny Reddick. Thank you.
So, okay, so we have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Great, thank you. Thank you, Chairman.
I'm here for.
Chairwoman, sorry. It's hard, so I serve on another board and I'm the chair of that one, so it's so, and I also went here. Sorry. Okay, The other thing, so that's on the quality side. On the quantity side, I've been talking about this for a while, and we identified this option, they're shown on the picture on the right, this hardware, it's a unit, a device that uses light to measure height of water, to give us a stage measurement. These instruments have been used first by the Maumee River Basin Commission east of us, and now by the Key River Basin Commission west of us, as an inexpensive alternative to a USGS gauging site. Now, let's be real clear, these do not do everything that the USGS does. This is just the hardware. In order to get the kind of results out of it, we got to do a lot of work in the way of taking flow measurements and doing transects and maintaining the thing. But it is, it seems very accurate and it generates live data. Like it's on the internet, you can get it down, you know when they stop working. It seems like a good option for at least knowing stage, knowing how high it is. So I've got a quote, it's actually under the $10,000 limit, and we do have the money in our budget, but I would still like to ask for the commission's approval to purchase 8 of these units. We've got I've got spots for each one of these. This is just a first cut, but I'd like to explain what I'm thinking with on that. By the way, the cost of 8 of those units with shipping and tax also is $8,132, which is about $1,000 per unit. The first year of service is covered. After that, it's $250 a year. That's the cell phone plan that allows the data to get from the unit up to the cloud, and then they host it in the database. I asked some important questions about this. First of all, is the data ours? Do we own it? Because that's an issue. Yes, we own the data. They just request that we share it with them for so they can basically calibrate their units and stuff, so that they can, what's it called, R&D to make the application better. But yes, it's definitely all owned, and we get to choose to make it public. The other thing I asked them was, hey, what's, let's say this company goes out of business or something. Like, do we have a unit that can't talk to anything else? And he's like, no, they can be used with any SIM provider, and anybody who can do this software, he can use things or whatever. But it's like, actually, they're just about to release an open source version of it. So if someone really wants, he says, they can take us completely out of the picture. And then the last thing I asked him about was, warranty, damage, that kind of thing. They do have a 1-year warranty, covers everything except vandalism and negligence. If it's like, if you submerge it in the water, that's on you. But he actually, in most cases, will maintain a unit with a max of 500. But after that, they're working on a maintenance plan. If you wanted to enter into one, they're thinking it'd be about $200 per year, but they haven't gone that far yet.
You know, the lifespan versions.
I don't. I know the Keys had them in for probably 2 years now, but
So we would be installing these ourselves.
Exactly. Yeah. And in the case, so what I was like, 3 of them, I'm imagining going up into the North Branch of the Elkhart watershed. We did a study. In that study, one of the next steps was recommended some sites for USGS gauges. But we would look at installing these units in those places, or at least nearby. I also had some discussion with Indiana DNR about nearby gauges that were taken offline, and whether it would, by locating them where those old gauges were, could we maybe pick up some historical data to use back? So I would want to consult with, I'm pointing out there because I see Bob Mars and Bob helped us with that study. But we would certainly collaborate with the folks who did the study, as well as the Indiana DNR, who does a lot of this kind of monitoring, to make sure we install them in the places that's going to give us the most helpful information. But I'm thinking 3 of the units, yes, installed by us, up there in LaGrange and Noble counties, in the headwaters of the North Branch.
When you say us,
Yeah, so me and Kate and any kind of like helpers that I've got a guy who's like really good with big tools, and we need to drill a hole in a steel beam in the bridge. I've got. Sorry.
but I know what it's like when you're pushed to be overextended.
Yeah,
And is that can you fit that in your schedule?
I think I can. Like I said, Kate's gonna be there to help, and the one that's the biggest help is, so those three out there in the North Branch of the Elkhart are more on us, and I'm gonna have my guy that helps me with different projects, and he's like a welder and kind of guy. But county highway will definitely be involved from, first of all, mission standpoint, but the other 5 units, at least temporarily, we've got an opportunity to assist St. Joe County on a regional detention study, on the headwaters of Bowman Creek. There's 5 spots where they need some additional data at. This would be short-term, maybe 3 to 5 years max, where we would pick up some of those high flows. And in this case, the county engineering or highway department is willing to go out there and help us install the units. So what I'm thinking of is, and again, once we get the kind of flows we need out of those, we can redeploy the units to somewhere else in the watershed. But what I'm thinking is, Kate, myself, my friend, come along when the county's doing these installs to get a good sense of how we do it right there close to home in St. Joe County with assistance. And then that helps us when we go out to LaGrange and Noble to install them ourselves.
What's the cost, what's the operating cost of each unit?
First year's covered $250 a year. And that's the part I checked, like, we have stuck with you, we have to keep using your service, and he said, no, you could move it to someone else who does this, he's got the programming.
So these are cell phone based, aren't they?
Yes, exactly, you gotta make sure we got cell signal there, that's gonna be one thing, yes.
Well, yeah, and,
Otherwise, they have a satellite-based unit, which is more expensive, but yeah.
do they only measure, water level, do they measure speed or anything like that?
They do, and so just level. And so in order to convert that to discharge or flow, we need to go out there and measure the dimensions of the channel and measure velocity at several different depths at different flows. So it's gonna take some time to generate, I don't know, it's not a curve, but it's some kind of number that allows you to do the conversion. Yeah. Yes. So,
Have you searched for any that would measure speed and velocity?
well, I have, so I've got another company that I've talked to about this, and actually 2. And both of them are just staged, like the alternative, there's no place for having it converted to flow is with USGS. And I mean, it's not even, I think I've got it on here. We'd be looking at $20,000 for installation and $14,000 annual maintenance and operation. So, I mean, it's not even comparable.
Well, I mean, the nice thing about what we've got in Golden Lake is, of course, we've got one that measures the level of the lake. The other constantly measures everything.
Right.
So that's all you need.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what to consider some of the lake gauges that went offline. There's several of them, and they're saying install them there. You're only measuring the stage anyway, and it would be able to be connected with some historical record that already exists to see how things are now compared to what they were 40 years ago.
Would there be any way to get that information on the same database?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes. We'll be able to host it. We've talked to our developer about the site that we're building. Because right now we've got USGS, all the USGS gauges in the basin are live on this one that also has Elkhart County's stormwater data. They're all on there, and this would be able to be on there as well. So, but yeah, I would like to get a start. This is what I see as a start. And we've been doing quality now. I think quantity is going to be really important. I've got folks, talked about, how do we do a plan for the whole basin about where additional monitoring would be most helpful. But I think those 5 units, we know they can help one of our members right now. It would potentially save, I think it was the engineer we met with, John, was like, 7-figure project cost might be able to get down to mid-6s. And this is regional attention, saving a bunch of homes that are getting flooded right now. So it's certainly like in our wheelhouse. It's a way to give back the way we've been doing Noble County and with Elkhart County now. It's a service that we can help provide back to our members that are supporting us. So I think it's a great opportunity to get our feet wet with this, and then be able to redeploy them as we sort of plan for basin-wide monitoring.
Matt, are you looking for a motion to purchase these?
Yeah, I would. The 8 units at $8,200.
All right, I make that motion that Matt purchase those units. John,
We have a second.
Steve Vaughn, LaGrange County, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Awesome. thank you guys. I do want to talk about one thing that kind of is related to all this. So I have had, so keep talking about Bob, but I've also had a lot of talks. We had a presentation a couple meetings ago from Jack Whitman from Intera, talking about some work that they're doing over in Steuben County around water availability, but he's been working with the IFA in central Indiana on a big regional water study, and he was suggesting that there could be opportunities for us to get a better handle on water in our basin through the IFA and in support of regional water planning. That is, it's a couple steps involved in this, but being recognized as a regional water planning entity and looking at the monitoring of our water as part of the infrastructure. And it is infrastructure. So yes, this is to help understand tanks and pipes and wells and that kind of thing, but it's also, the monitoring itself, he's arguing, can be part of the infrastructure. So we've been talking about this and what might be involved, and basically where it's led me is I feel that I would like to ask for the creation of a committee. I would like some members that work a little more closely with me and some of these experts that we've been working with to basically come up with a kind of an overarching strategy that guides our water monitoring. And there's some things I put this crazy name of it, Water Infrastructure Security Committee. Like what? Here's what I'm thinking on that. So the Steuben County issue kind of got this started, and it's around this water security thing, right? And that's on.
You're talking.
Yes,
I send.
Libby's the one that keeps me updated on this, but I also heard about it. So one of our members, sorry, go ahead then.
Mark,
Flash, yes.
Yeah, a Bosch of that.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've been in frequent telephone calls, most of the time since the
Yes.
events. And I became involved on this board because we were at Holy Terror, this leader was going to involve her. So, in talking to Mark, he said, no one minds only a small portion of the Kendall water. It's extremely vast. He said our real major concern is in California, Nevada, and Colorado, because currently what we're dealing with is more than we've had in a long time, and we do have DNR wells that monitor the height and level of the wells in our county. So I was curious to find out about that. He said our largest concern is to build out so many hard surfaces that we are in perfect line for 100-year flood. And I will tell you, living there and living on a creek that has gotten larger and larger, and with frozen water and rain coming in and frozen fields, we in the past week or two have experienced flooding in areas we have never had. So I am interested in basically the maintenance of our water system, the maintenance of our drainage, the maintenance of which also in our area, we have assessed values. I'm the chairman of the drainage board in the county. So my problem is the assessments in no way pay for the reconstructions. They don't pay for the maintenance. So what we have, I have people building things that are putting water, and they're doing a great job. They're doing all this workstation, a lot of spot. And then our ditches can't continue. I bought those ditches, those suck holes. Our drainage system is 1930s in the county. And we don't have the money or the support to maintain a lot, so I'm sure. Ohio, Michigan, Indiana, Iowa. And so I'm kind of the rebel on that board because I questioned everything, and they wanted our county to give that $500,000 for more wells. And the minute that they gave me that number, they said, why haven't you done Michigan did it? Ohio did it. And I go, you know.
So I thought, that's an awful lot of money. So I called him, and he said, wow, you're the first person who ever called me up there. So you guys, now keep track. Your own county, if you got to West Street, where is being settled. Yes, you have to protect the waterways. You have to make sure you have clean water. You have to make sure your drainage systems in your counties are working. And we have to find a better way to provide for the fix of those without having to continue to get weird grants or grants to get our damn money back. And that's kind of where I am. I'm sorry. Man knows.
And believe it or not, I did not pay her to come and say all that stuff, but I don't like, that is so, Liddy, you just hit on.
I know.
Yeah. So the fact that we're a two-state basin is huge. Bob and I have talked about this before. That we have, as part of the Great Lakes Compact, we have to show that we are maintaining and managing our water. Otherwise, we are vulnerable to other states coming and taking it. And that's why Michigan has done some crazy things, whether it be installing wells or they have a permitting system that goes way beyond anything we've done here in Indiana for waterway roads. I think this, and I think the IFA maybe pick up on this, that this is part of showing that we're maintaining and managing our water, and that protects our right to have exclusive access to it. So it's not necessarily that, you know, so I got, so not only did you send me emails on this, but our vice president, Alicia Walsh, she's like, I live within 5 miles of this, and this thing could draw down my well. And it's like, we wouldn't know. So that theoretically, you get close enough to the cone of depression, yeah, you could see, with a big enough water control, you're going to see local influences. But the idea that we're not going to have water for new industry in Sudan seems, according to Mark, and I don't think he's lying to us, seems pretty far-fetched right now. But the other side of it, what does it do on the surface then? And how do we guarantee that we maintain that exclusive access to it can be ensured by measuring and monitoring it? And what I'm just thinking about, that we're not just talking about groundwater, but we are talking about that in a way that we haven't before in this, since I've been in this group, you know, that we're recognizing that stuff is connected and that, you know, this is the way Michigan looks at it. And I think for some of our headwater counties like Steuben and LaGrange has got parts like this too. We have to think about what the base flow is in those streams too. Enough drawdown. If you start pumping a lot, you're going to have in our dry times of summer, some of those ditches and streams that we irrigate out of aren't going to have water. So that's part of this picture too, is understanding, so we get the flow gauges out there to go with the wells that are monitoring what's going on in groundwater. And what I've been talking to Jack about in Boxford, we talk about this, and all the surveyors probably, is the relationship of that stuff to land cover and land use change. And so understanding, like, as we pave, as we till, you know, how are we changing the way water is going in and across? And what, you know, do we have capacity? So the things I was like, the change that I want to make sure that, you know, my goal on this would be better understand and predict the impact of change. When I say change, I'm talking about land and water use changes. So new fish farms that come on, or new developments that are going in that are paving a big area, but also climate changes, sanitation and stormwater management changes. Over in St. Joe County, we've got a huge area of the county, really dense on septic and wells. You know, so by getting that part of the county off, some parts of it off of septic, what kind of change could that potentially make? And can we measure and monitor it or predict it possibly with some modeling? Anyway, and then of course our land use practices, changes there, you know, by, you know, this is where we work with the surveyor's office on, you know, basically the amount of water that you're sending to the ditch to be served changes depending on how you're managing your land. And so kind of recognizing some of those kind of changes. And then when I talk about infrastructure here, I want to be really clear. My boss at NACOG, when I told him about this idea, or the name of this thing, he's like, ooh, I don't know about infrastructure. I don't know if you should, I think of pipes and tanks when you you talk infrastructure. I'm like, I know, and that's what it's been for a long time, but more and more people, and I think some of the people on this board are understanding it's green and gray, that our wetlands are part of our infrastructure, and that these, not only the ditches, but some people don't even see ditches and regulated drains as part of our infrastructure. I mean, if that's not, you need a lot, but we're going further than that, it's not, sorry. It's not just the regulated drains, but it's the receiving bodies of water as well. These streams and rivers that aren't regulated drains, but they have to take the flow from all the regulated drains that we're sending them. How can we ensure that they can take the additional capacity as we build out, as we improve? So say it's that we go and open up from a 12-inch tile to a 24-inch tile to handle the new flows. But what about Pigeon Creek that's getting it? Is it going to take it?
I just had that from MDOT. They wanted to put in a 36-inch tile near I-69 that feeds into one of our lakes, and they're replacing an 18, and it goes into an 18. I thought, wow, that's smart. No.
Yeah.
Velocity and flow.
So what Jack was encouraging me to do is, like, I think about this stuff all the time. I'm talking to these experts often about this. What should we do? Where should we put our monitors? How should we do it? And he's like, I think in order to be successful in going to the IFA, first of all, but I just generally to really make this something, there's got to be more ownership on the part of the commission. It can't just be me that's talking to the experts. So what I'm looking for is at least a small group of members that represent some different interests in this thing. That's the names I've suggested up here. By the way, I've only talked to, well, Alicia, I sent her, she just had her baby. But I talked to Doris and said, we wouldn't be here. This is not like the only people, anybody who's interested, feels like they have something to add, please. I'm thinking virtual meetings, but I'm thinking of some additional time outside of these quarterly meetings to talk about this, to invite folks like the people who did our study of the North Branch, and also Jack who's come and talk about what this might look like, and make sure it's driven by this commission, not by Matt Mearsman from NACOG, that's driving this thing. The state is going to be more likely to be interested in supporting this work. So, yeah. Advisory?
Yeah, if you guys can do advisory.
Okay. Brandy's our attorney. I didn't introduce her earlier, but thank you. So, if we create this, we should create it as an advisory committee.
Yes, and it will be subject to all of the stuff. So, you'll be able to focus this meeting and depending on, they first, one month meetings are.
That's what I was just going to ask. I'm imagining this would probably be virtual.
Don't think that would be an issue.
Okay, so maybe then, and Brandon can tell me about it, maybe then we don't create a committee. Maybe can people volunteer to come talk to me someday? I don't know. I mean, you're saying there's no, like,
You guys really, but
on this,
probably you have some private conversation.
okay.
I mean,
I hadn't thought about this, obviously.
if you're wanting any kind of official consent from the board to do this, it would be a ratifying.
Okay. Okay. Does those same laws then apply to, like, I think there's some language in our bylaws and our statute, maybe have an executive committee that's like officers? Okay. So, so help me then. We have an electronic meeting policy for this commission.
Yes.
But if we were to create an advisory committee, that
It would
would,
make a separate policy for that committee that would more closely geared to how many members it has, but it would look very similar.
but you think it would work under our statute as far as that goes?
You still have to have, you have to serve a majority quorum, and you have to have it in blue. You have to.
Well, I did not obviously run this by our attorney first. So maybe I go to the drawing board. I'm guessing there's some willingness from some folks to, I could be wrong. Adam, you're here in the room, Randy is not, unfortunately, actually 3 of the people I mentioned, but are there other people who are like, yeah, it's, we either do, John? Adam, would you, okay. All right, well, let me figure out like what would be involved in the way of policies or things we'd have to adopt to make that happen. That's interesting, I'm sorry, I hadn't even thought about that. But you guys all know kind of where I'm thinking or where I'm going with this is I feel like we need to have a little more buy-in, which is going to require more time than we can do with this kind of a body, just on a quarterly basis. All right.
This would be a voice like towards legislation then? Because there really is no protection against groundwater consumption, or is that what this is intended?
It's more to be able to monitor and predict change as we, like secure that we've got enough or that we don't have, or that we've got enough, whether that be around like water or capacity in the channel to take the flows. But just more from a planning side of things. I mean, it could get involved in legislation or regulations if we felt like, look, we don't have enough, something needs to be done. This needs to be stopped or changed or something. I don't know if I'm understanding your question, but I mean, I can imagine.
Kind of see what's the overall purchasing goal of this committee?
Right, would be, to guide the development of a strategy for us to basically monitor, measure, model, and predict water in the basin.
Surface and ground.
Surface and ground, yes, and the relationship of the two. And being able to say like we know, we can see when we are changing things, like we kind of have a better understanding of our system, really. I mean,
Looking at high areas, what the drawdown of the aquifer and stuff like that.
I would think like the modeling folks, if we get into that, like they'll be able to tell us what they can include and what they can't. But I'm typically like at least looking at like land cover and wetland loss and those kind of things, where I've kind of gone with this. But I will defer to folks who know better. But I know there will need to be some level of like instrumenting, like actually deploying some monitors to get the data to then model it. And we've got some from satellite in the way of land cover, just more saying, look, we understand our system, because I don't know that we fully do. I mean, if you just look at the North Branch and the study that we did there, I think that we learned a lot through that, but I don't know. Just think monitoring has always been a big part of the River Basin Commission from before I was ever here, and I think we're positioned to maybe do it at a level we've never done it before, but I want to make sure we get it right. It's enough of that. All right, Chris, that's all I got.
So table that.
I think so.
Research.
Table it, yes. More research.
Hey guys, I got a question for you. When you did the research on these water monitoring things that you could maybe like $1,000 for, did you actually do some additional research to maybe see if there was some of actually monitoring water speed? Because that would really cost if you could find something you can do both.
Yeah, just the USGS ones, and even they don't do it like you're thinking. Like there's not a propeller. Like they use an instrument to calibrate it, but it's all based on level.
Oh, it is?
Yes.
Huh.
Yeah, I don't think, as far as Bob, you speak up, like is there any instruments out there that use like a propeller or a package or something that's it still seems like.
You use Doppler to measure the velocity. You do it in a number of stage, rating curve, like you're talking about, is the general way we're going to do this, because we'll make a relationship and then we'll check it whenever the channel changes or whenever we see a change in the system. It allows us to do that. We can do Doppler velocity measures. And if you take velocity that way, it's expensive. Very expensive.
Okay.
And it's another thing to maintain. But when it's staged and attractive to a lot of people, is you've got something that short of vandalism will stand a lot of things. dock boards can sit on the bottom of the channel and people take them all as souvenirs sometimes. Fine. They have recreation and use of your waters, I say the potential for loss.
But thanks, Bob. I think there is like one of our partners, I think is actually using some of that down in the Turkey Creek watershed, Lake Wawasee. I think Nate Bosch may be using some Doppler for some of their measurements there.
We should go Jerry does. Jerry.
Oh, is that what he uses too? Okay. Yeah, then,
Did you look at any other wastewater type instruments that monitor, GPM or any of that? Whether it's up
not exclusive, but one of the people I talked to the other company is Mnet, is a local company in South Bend area that's helped some with their sewer system. And so I asked them, I told them what we're looking to do. And they were like, I think the kind of instruments you're looking at is probably your best bet.
I'm just asking.
Yeah. All right.
All right.
Yes, so, since our last meeting, we kind of talked about, and I don't know that we really settled on, I was gonna look in to make sure we have a space available, and we do. So I have reserved, Fernwood Botanical Gardens for new folks, the annual River Basin Symposium. It's an event we've been doing for 22 years, and the intent of the event is to bring together the Michigan folks who do the similar things to what you all do, all into the room together, so we get the whole basin there. There's usually a keynote speaker that talks about something that's of general interest to the whole group, and it's largely a networking thing. We've had to do it virtually the last couple of years, and it used to be probably the biggest thing that we were doing in the way of an event. The last one we had was in person, was at the Piggin State Park over in Angola. We moved it to the Indiana side for once. Prior to that, it had been always held in Michigan for a long time. Talk about going back to Michigan, we're going to kind of go back and forth, try and make it attractive to both sides. So we were due to go back to Fernwood. I checked with them. They have since we were there last. They built a new education center. That little picture in the left corner, the Sims Education Center, really cool facility. I reserved it for May 6th. It's a Friday. We've always traditionally held this on a Friday. Kind of kicks off the start of the weekend for a lot of folks. We have always held it at a place like the state park or this botanical garden where you can, after lunch, go and take a walk outside, sort of a nature place. And that's always been part of what the group was interested in doing. So sticking with that, we've got Fernwood reserved. I don't know, catering is a whole new thing. We always had food at it, and now with COVID, they've changed. They don't have their own caterer. We have to bring it outside. I need to check the budget, but that's not important. I'll figure that out, whether or not we have the budget for food. Because that was part of it in the past, this was not an event that we were able to offer to anybody and everybody who wanted to come. It was kind of an invite type deal. Generally, at a certain point, we would allow folks to register once we knew that all the members, like, you all didn't have to pay, but you had to let me know you were coming, and if we had room, we would offer spots to the public, and we had capacity you can offer for I'll look into that, but I guess two things I wanted to talk to you all about is if we go back to in person, we are then limited somewhat on who can come. That is the one advantage of virtual. It was free. Anybody who wanted to jump on the call jumps on the call, and there's some advantages of that. You can try potentially to kind of broadcast the meeting like we do these with some owl device. That's certainly possible. But I guess I'm just looking for a final call from you guys. I could go either way. I've secured 2 speakers. This is the other thing I want to talk about, the topic. We batted around some different ideas. I got some things I was going to share my director's report about this, but other than wetlands, the other big legislative thing this year, this session, was a bill to create watershed development commissions. It ended up dying, not dying, but kind of stalled out on the House side. I know the author, I know one of the sponsors. It's going to come back. It's basically what happened in the Kankakee River Basin Commission. We talked about it in this group before. But basically, the idea behind it is that to create in Indiana a way for local governments to fund watershed management. Now, we talk more about the specific bills and the issues around it, but that's the idea. It's fairly unique to Indiana right now. Michigan has been looking at ways of how they might go about it, and I've talked to 2 speakers who are willing to join us virtually or in person that are sort of experts on two different avenues towards local government, because at the one level it's state funds that would support it. But anyway, I've got 2 speakers that will come on May 6th, that Friday. I just want a pulse of whether we go virtual or in person, I guess. Anybody have strong feelings on this?
Now, see, the capacity
It'll be about 100. In like a normal, I don't even feel like COVID spacing or whatever, but like normal spacing, I think it was 100.
I think it's important to get back to normal as soon as possible, so.
Do it in person, kind of do an invite.
What?
Do it in person and kind of have an invite, starting with
Yeah, and if,
members
you
and
know,
equivalents.
comfortable wearing a mask, wear a mask. If not, you don't have to.
Does anybody on the commission feel strong about the other way? Like, I really think virtual would be better. Okay. Will I get somebody there on May 6th? Anybody look at calendars yet?
Yeah, I'm pretty.
Okay, a couple of you anyway. It hasn't been, in the past, it wasn't really well attended by members. Believe it or not. That's, but definitely a lot of people in the field of water management. But I'll start with you all in your equivalents on the Michigan side, and we'll create a deadline. Let me know by this date there. Otherwise, we'll open this up to some of the folks. I mean, the attendance we're getting at these meetings is really encouraging. People are interested in water, so I think this topic, there's a lot of folks on the private side, but nonprofit watershed groups out there, friends of whatever, that would be interested in this topic too. So, all right. I'm going to try and plan for an in-person event on May 6th. No, I don't think so. Great. So the only sort of official item under new business is we adopted a purchase policy back in June, I think it was. And that allowed us to be able to pay bills more efficiently in between these quarterly meetings. And Arthur and Randy helped work on this for us. And I don't know what I was doing, I don't remember what, but I just happened to be looking at the BACOG agreement that we have with BACOG for our services and realized there might be a potential conflict in some of the language. So it's this highlighted section. I did bring a couple copies of this. Let's see it. This is from agreement with BACOG under the financial section. That basically it states the only ways that we were allowed to distribute SJRBC funds prior to that were with one of these signed claims forms that would have come from ED. But our policy talks about how I can authorize purchases up to $10,000. There's some conflict there. And Randy said one way to address this would be to have the River Basin Commission and BACOG adopt an amendment to that agreement that replaces that language that I had highlighted in the last ones and inserts this, which is only disperse funds in accordance with the policy we adopted. So I shared that with the director of BACOG. They have a policy board meeting coming up next week. They're going to adopt it there. You didn't think it would be an issue at all. Appreciated the clarification. I don't know if anybody has any thoughts quite what we can need to have a signature of the chair in order to take action or to approve this amendment.
Move to adopt it.
Was that
Right.
Ray? Thanks, Ray.
Second. Second. All in favor? Opposed?
Great. Thank you. That's all I had. They were sort of explicit. I think.
Anything from commission members, any other?
We do have an item from the floor, like next or close, it's coming up. But this would be for commission members if there's any business. Yeah.
I just wanted to introduce, Rob Brennan. He's the Mishawaka's new MS store manager, taking over the program for the city of Mishawaka. He comes with an extensive environmental consulting background, so we're happy to have him on board and try to see him around here more often as well.
Exactly.
Anything else?
Next item, yeah, I guess.
Yes.
Okay. So I've got this on the agenda, had it for a long time. This is where I try to give you guys an update on my activities that might not be covered on the agenda in other places. So I did a lot of stuff on North Branch, Elkhart, Old County, flood resilience, all that kind of stuff. We talked about that. Water monitoring, we talked about that. A couple things we don't talk about, and you're gonna be like, I'm fine, because it's boring. But I did a bunch of administrative stuff over this last quarter. Kate and I put together an annual report, which I sent around to you in January. Turned out real nice, kind of highlighted some of the projects we did over the last year. It's kind of cool. Gateway, the State Board of Accounts, I'm the fiscal officer of the River Basin Commission. There was some stuff that I had to do there that was a lot more than it should have been. But also member invoicing. I mentioned that we sent out invoices to our local communities. Got those all out with Ashley's help. Thank you, Ashley. And then we had several new members this year. Whether it be election or what, but Elkhart County Health Department had a new officer. Noble County Health Department got a new health officer. Obviously, Steuben County Surveyor. They're on the third surveyor now since Larry Gilbert was here, I think.
Yeah, it's been a year.
So Jim Slayball is our
Jim's like.
yeah, Jim's our newest member. And we're excited. Jim is what?
If all of you are people who pay great one.
Yeah, the attrition rate before it was pretty high. So, which is understandable, those of you don't know, the seat Larry Gilbert was in that position for like 40 years or something, 30 years. Exactly. So, when Lynn mentions that there wasn't a lot of money left in a lot of those accounts, Larry just kind of kept things the same for a long time. And LaGrange actually went through this, 2 years ago when Zach came on, and Rex Spranger in their fourth year now. Yeah, so we feel for you, and I hope that you'll stick around, and we'd like to help in any way we can. Love to tell you about the stuff we're doing in LaGrange. That's one of the other things that I had on this executive. We've done some work with LaGrange County Surveyor's Office on apportionment since the last meeting. Advocacy-wise, I mentioned the Watershed Development Commission bill, and then planning in addition to the Noble County flood resilience stuff. There is a watershed management plan being developed for the upper Elkhart River. Nancy's here. I'm sure she'll speak up a little bit later in the meeting, but sort of helping to bring some of those upper watershed. This effort is being driven by the Elkhart Restoration Association, which historically has been focused here in Goshen. And so we need some upstream people and really try to drive some of our Noble and LaGrange County to those meetings and participate in them myself. Those are the major updates I wanted to give you that just didn't involve the agenda. So unless anybody has any questions for me, I will stop. I got a little, it's like a 2 minute. Okay.
No questions, we'll go to the items.
I did submit a request out to our stakeholder list for anybody that might have questions or anything, so I didn't get any.
I do want to talk a little bit about the Elkhart Restoration Association food, and personally, start with the thanks for the River Basin Commission and that all of your support throughout the years, both when I worked for the on this and that you guys are amazing.
Can you introduce yourself for those that
Name from the president of the Restoration Association. I'm with the Elkhart County SJRBC for years, and I have very good hands, and that's not my job anymore. But I was telling everybody I was raised in the Elkhart there is still a big for me. And so I stayed involved with the association, and they asked me to be president, and I said, only if we could redo the watershed management plan, but we have some problems from the get-go. And I would love it if you guys have the entire St. Joe Basin, but I never thought that this whole was too much for us. I'm very relieved that we are concentrating on the upper three sub-watersheds and we're saving Turtle Creek and the lower upper. Yes, the lower, because lower is supposed to be south and that's how. Anyway, we are having our first public meeting on March 18th from 6 to 8 p.m. for input on what we're doing in the North Branch, the South Branch of the Alberta, which is mainly Noble County, but some of the range and also some of Pasco. And the Salmon Creek watershed, which is mainly in Upper. So those are the three that we are working on. And our first meeting is going to be a drop-in meeting. You can come 6 and stay till 8 o'clock. But you can also come at 6 and go to different. That's what you do. So it's 6 and 8 is a walk-in, drop-in meeting. And this meeting is hosted by the Upper Restoration Association, but it is a 319 grant that is designed to update the watershed management plan for these 3 subs that we did back over different and anything anybody did then would be fine for 319 eligibility, but now it is a big one. And my goal has always been, let's get everybody to the table, let's figure out what those big people that come to the meetings want to do, and let's try to make that possible, but the reporting of this application. So it's really important to me that the departments don't come in the range of not involved, and that's my pitch for today.
Working meeting.
The meeting is in Ligonier, in the city hall, in the basement. RJT, I've got a bunch of these, so anybody who wants to take one, hopefully I have enough. If you know me real well, and I've got your email, I'll give you one ready. Anyway, I've got these flyers for that public meeting, and the more input we get, the better it is. And I also have our first brochure that we put out, and it's and it's ways that people could volunteer to help us. So if you have an office that you think people are super interested in volunteering, take a few, take more than a few if you need to. But that's not one of these. But I have a small stack of these, and I can get you more if you need more. And if we don't get rid of these, you need to take more than I have. So these 2 documents are available. I also brought my big map, so if you want to see what the map really looks like, I know I didn't look back here. And I've got members of the steering committee marked on there, and I just thank everybody for the support that I'm getting throughout the watershed. We have always used our people. If you guys know somebody who's in this watershed who has a passion for water quality and quality, please let me know who they are. So, does anybody have any questions about what we're doing? Because I do have it. And not sit down and shut up.
I'll just add for Nancy, I obviously attended their first steering committee meeting. I see some other folks in the room that did as well. And I invited, Nancy's working with a consultant, and I invited both of them to give, I invited Nancy today to let you know about the public meetings coming up. But for my mobile and range folks, there was some confusion around, well, wait, I thought you guys just did a North Branch Elkhart study. What's this study? What is going on here? And so, I invited, Sarah, who Nancy's been working with, to come, at our next meeting and just kind of talk about how this differs from what we did in the North Branch. And Nancy threw around some numbers, 319 in grants and that kind of thing, and that is, important. But we're gonna try and tease out a little bit at the end of the next meeting, some of the distinction of what's unique about this planning process compared to what we've been doing. So you will hear more about this at the next meeting.
Maybe I missed your meeting, but, so the 319 you're referring to is the grant. I know you had a number of years ago. You're talking about that. You're talking about one that you're proposing to apply for. You're talking about what you got.
We are talking about a second 319 grant to update, revise these three sections of the original.
So this is
Yeah. Then, no,
They got
these.
You got it. Okay.
It's a done deal. Everyone. People, it will be our function. And there is some that is the 17th or the 18th, because my notebook and Jason's cell phone has it on the website as the 17th, and this says the 18th, and I copied this. It's probably a kind of long spiritual. It is, because I can't imagine we're doing that. Spend back the real thing and you can kind of sort of let everybody know what the real thing is. You can look at the Elkhart Facebook page because I guarantee I'm going to go to Facebook.
Sounds good.
So it's either the 17th or 18th, but if you don't trust the date, don't share this with anybody. I don't have the on this.
What was it?
It's not the month. It's not very far away.
The date?
It's either the 17th.
What day of the week?
If I could have.
Gotcha. You do that. Take it from me.
That's what's going to save you. You can have, but, we'll change it for another one. So.
How's it? Everybody wants to.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're not meeting that. Okay.
It's a 17th, make sure they all wear green or something. The grant. Planning for this not on your.
The grant is for the watershed management. It's lending to pay up to the first year, so that we know when we actually write the plan the second year that we emphasize the right areas.
So the last one that I was involved in with one of these, they switched it from 319 to 205 day or whatever that means. Because they said 205 day was their planning grants, 319 was their application. Have they changed something there again?
I signed a contract, that's what's planning. That's.
I'm not. I didn't say myself.
Well, you can understand. We have other items.
Something else for March 17th, a quick plug. My name is Maddie Newman. I'm the City of Ocean Stormwater Department. Probably with everybody's here. The City of Goshen has been working on a flood resilience plan. We're also working with Christopher Burke. So it's not like Noble's draft plan is coming, ours is ready. And we're having a public meeting on that. Goshen Theater, SJRBC on March 17th. If you Google Goshen flood zone, we have a map page where we've collected a bunch of information, including more details on the meeting. There's also storylines and other things where we use some FEMA data and created some tools that are easy to get. So check out the page if you're interested. I can answer your questions.
And I got to plug Maddie, her and Jason have been incredibly helpful. I've probably told you all this before, but getting the space, technology to me now, like they've come early and helped me out. And so, it's a terrible scheduling deal. It's like two related things because I'm going to be at their event, the flood resilience one for Goshen. And that's why when Kate and I were just talking, we might be able to divide and conquer on this. So we got basic people there.
There come up and your form is kind of a beautiful one. But just so you know, if you're taking it works the same. If it works, it's still what it's done. You guys are.
Wow. Well, yeah. Now, so I know this is in the weeds here, Brandy, but not only would we need to have 11 of us, but wouldn't there also, what's that? And have 3 counties represented, right? Yes, so we'd have to have 11 members from at least 3 different counties. So when I come here to toward you, it's okay.
Who's gonna wear that now?
Right.
Okay. If there aren't any other items to support, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Is that second? Who was the second? Dan Match, all right, thank you. Ashley's gonna leave. Thanks a lot, everybody. We'll be patient to make the trip. Thank you.